So from management practices in Canada, we're now moving to management practices in farms in Hungary. The next paper is on basically performance in large-scale dairy farms in Hungary in relation to this management. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is István Fodor. I'm a PhD student from the University of Veterinary Medicine, Budapest, and we conducted this study together with my PhD supervisor, Dr. László Ozsvári. First, let me shortly introduce the Hungarian dairy production system, which is, here is Hungary. Hungarian dairy production system is quite an intensive system where pastures play only a little role, and there are more than 450 large-scale performance-tested dairy farms operating in Hungary with an average herd size of approximately 400 cows. And we decided to conduct this survey because research from the previous years has shown that suboptimal reproductive performance is responsible for the largest losses among herd-level animal health problems in Hungary, in contrast to the worldwide trends where mastitis is the most important loss source. And the aim of our study was to survey the reproductive management practices and the reproductive performance in large-scale dairies in order to assess the current situation and to find some possible ways for improvement. From May to November 2015, we personally visited 34 large-scale Holstein Friesian herds where we made personal interviews with farm managers or veterinarians using questionnaires about the reproductive management practices applied in their dairy herds. And at the same time, we also collected herd-level data from the farm management software. This survey covers more than 25,000 cows, which accounts for approximately 15% of the total Hungarian performance-tested dairy cow population. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the performance and management of the cows only, so I'm not going to discuss heifers at all. And I'm just going to highlight some main findings. As you can see in this graph, the average herd size of the herds involved in our study was 755 cows, which is twice that of the average Hungarian large-scale performance-tested dairy herds. And their average standard lactational milk yield was higher as well, higher than the average, because the average in Hungary in this period was approximately 9,200 kilograms. And out of 10 cows present in the herd, 3 were culled on an annual basis, and 1/3 of these cows were culled due to reproductive disorders. And these numbers, these figures of reproductive performance clearly show that, that the performance in Hungarian dairy herds is really suboptimal from an economic point of view. So there is still large space for further improvement. 3/4 of the herds involved in our study applied voluntary waiting period after calving, and the length of this period was 40 to 69 days in the majority of the herds involved. 75% of the herds in our survey applied at least 2 methods for heat detection, and sorry, spoiler. So this button. And the visual observation, the traditional way of searching for cows in heat was the most popular method of searching for cows which are in heat, but the use of activity meters was quite popular, since 2/3 of the herds involved in our survey applied an activity meter system in their dairy herds. Most farms involved in our survey used any kind of hormonal synchronization protocols in cows, and and off-sync was by far the most popular method of hormonal synchronization protocols. But 20% of the farmers and veterinarians decided not to use any synchronization protocol, but to use prostaglandins, prostaglandin analogs in cows. We also asked farm managers and veterinarians whether they use sex semen in cows or not. And 3 out of the 34 farms reported that, yes, they do use sex semen in cows as well, but they had more or less strict certain preferences regarding in which cows to use sex semen, and these preferences are listed here in this slide. In 70% of the dairy herds involved in our survey applied at least one method for at least one early pregnancy diagnosis method, and by far transrectal ultrasonography was the most popular one. And in 80% of these herds, performed pregnancy diagnosis at least on a weekly basis. And in 12% of the herds, pregnancy was diagnosed every single day. The earliest time of the first pregnancy check was around 35 days. And after the initial pregnancy diagnosis, pregnancy was confirmed once in almost half of the herds. And the timing of this confirmation was around drying off. And in farms where pregnancy was confirmed twice after the initial diagnosis, the first occasion was around 60 days after insemination, and the second one was around drying off. We also asked the farm managers and veterinarians on which criteria they base the decision of culling cows which fail to conceive, and daily milk yield was the most frequent answer. Individual or small group culling was the most prevalent, and regarding postpartum reproductive examinations, 1/3 of the herds performed not only rectal examination postpartum, but vaginal examination as well. And when releasing cows from the calving pen into the lactating herd, in the majority of the farms, not only the uterus but the udder was examined as well. Heat stress is of increasing importance in Hungarian dairy in Hungary because it is projected that in the next few decades the number of heat stress days and the length of heat stress periods is going to increase in our country, and therefore it's really important that farmers are trying to protect their cows against the effects of heat stress. And as we can see in the majority of the dairy herds involved in our survey, there were some efforts towards heat stress abatement, but in a small fraction, a small proportion of the dairy herds, even ventilation fans were missing from the barn. This result is really, really praiseworthy, we think, because every single dairy herd involved in our survey performed regular laboratory analysis of the feedstuff of the cows. But in more than half of the herds, regular body condition score assessment was lacking. It was missing. to draw the most important conclusions and experiences from our study, from our survey. We concluded that data management should be improved in Hungarian dairy herds because calving interval and services per conception are the two most frequently used reproductive indices, and they are really overemphasized. And there's a need for uptake of novel indices, for example, pregnancy rate, which is a very rarely used indicator in Hungary. And another important experience that, and for example, the use of activity meters, the widespread use of activity meters also underpins this statement that stakeholders are willing to invest in improving reproductive performance if they think that this investment will pay for itself, so when they think it will be profitable. And I'd like to thank every single farm manager and veterinarian involved in our study. They were very helpful. They did a great job. And thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the floor? Come on, lads. I've been asking questions all morning. Give me a break. Oh, someone's getting up. Thank you.
Great paper. What was the loss of pregnancies between first confirmation and the and in those herds where they reconfirmed?
Mm-hmm. We also collected some data regarding this, but these were not shown because of the lack of time. And we collected data regarding abortions, really, so not these pregnancy losses. But the proportion of abortions in different herds were really extremely in a wide range. So in one herd we found that 0.1% could be extracted from the farm management software, and in the other farm 12.9. That was the largest. So it's really a huge range, and we think two things regarding this. The first is that what they enter into the what the farmers, what the veterinarians enter into the farm management software as an abortion, as a pregnancy loss. And the second one is if they enter this at all into the farm management software, because in many cases we suspect that they do not enter these kind of data, that the pregnancy was lost. Therefore, we may see very low percentages, even if in reality it would be much higher.
I have a question. You basically showed us that most farms used some form of synchronization for their cows to get them back in calf. Did you look at the performance of the cows that were synchronized in relation to like the synchronization protocol used, as in were people trying to make up for poor management decisions by using synchronization, or did those cows do actually very well?
The next step will be the more in-depth analysis of the results, but until recently we have only performed the descriptive analysis of the data, so I cannot answer you yet, but I hope in next year I can discuss it with you.
Very good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.